Before we begin, let me introduce you to the developer of this webinar. Donald E. Schmidt holds a PhD from the University of Washington, Seattle. His 35-year career has focused on marketing research with a specialty in modeling and analytics. He has worked for a number of companies including Quaker Oats, A.C. Nielsen, R.J. Reynolds, and Nestlé Purina Pet Care. In his multiple roles, he has been the father of several innovations focused on software development, linked to the results of statistical models and a wide range of analytics. These innovations often have had a highly technical underpinning, making it a challenge when delivering them to a non-technical sales and marketing user base. Needless to say, delivery of these innovations has been an ongoing challenge. However, gaining acceptance of his work has required that he develop the expertise highlighted in this webinar. The content of this webinar has been developed not only from Don's personal experiences, but from external seminars that he has attended. He is hoping that you will not only learn from the ideas presented in this webinar, but be able to build upon these concepts as you apply them in your organization. This webinar was originally presented to the Data and Marketing Association in February of 2017. If you have any questions or comments, once you have completed the presentation, Don can be reached by emailing him at datadoc2@live.com. He hopes that you will find this content useful. Welcome to the webinar on how to sell innovation within your organization. Today, let's talk about how to get innovation adopted, particularly when you encounter resistance to your new ideas. I think that the best way to start the discussion is to call out the underlying problem. And that is, people are averse to change. We know that change can be stressful. To be sure, it creates a lot of uncertainty. But in a highly competitive marketplace, continuous improvement, also known as change, is a business necessity. Each year, as the competition becomes more intense and continued growth becomes a daunting challenge, innovation and change are absolutely necessary if you want to be successful. If you're complacent, you are likely to lose. Several companies lie in the boneyards of history because they've failed to realize this basic fact. Think about companies like Kodak, Polaroid, Blockbuster Video, Compaq Computers, and Toys R Us. These are previously successful companies that failed to keep up with the times as evolving technologies changed the marketplace. These companies, along with many other examples, paid the ultimate price as a result of their failure to adapt. And don't think for one second that this couldn't happen to your company. Certainly, success is never guaranteed. But here's the conundrum. The difficulty is not so much developing innovation, but getting it accepted in the organization. So, I pose this question for you to consider. Do the people in your company have the skills that they need to advocate for change effectively? Mark Gallagher, a well-known business consultant and speaker, had this to say about innovation and change. If you aim to be the best, then it's essential to evolve constantly, learn from past mistakes, look for new opportunities, and have the flexibility to implement improved processes and solutions along the way. For the next 30 minutes, I will address the issue of how to effectively sell innovation and change. I will walk you through some useful tips and tricks that will help you overcome resistance to change. And, I will discuss some pathways, tactics, and strategies that will help you get your innovations accepted. Over my career, getting innovations accepted has been a frequent challenge. I certainly have had my share of successes and failures. Nevertheless, I have gained critical insights about how to overcome resistance and gain acceptance for my ideas. In this webinar, I will give you a glimpse of what I have learned. We will start with a discussion of the 6 critical elements for successfully selling your innovations. This is what I have called the influence infrastructure. It is a channel for change. Next, I will cover 5 tactics to make your ideas more interesting to people in your organization. How do you generate interest and excitement among your stakeholders for your innovations? Finally, I will pull these discussions together and review 7 rules to gain acceptance for your innovations with a dual purpose. First, to get your innovations accepted and integrated into business decisions. And second, to make them sustainable in your organization. Before we begin, let me define what I mean by innovation. Innovation is one of those terms that can mean different things to different people. So, let me be clear about what I am talking about. In this webinar I am defining innovation in a fairly broad sense. Innovation can be something that you or an internal team have developed. We often call this homegrown innovation. Alternatively, it can be something developed externally by someone else. For example, it can be something brought in by a service supplier, something you observe a competitor doing, or even something you learn about from another industry, perhaps in the trade press or at a conference. Homegrown or imported, it is considered to be innovation if it involves changes that lead you to a more effective process or a better bottom line result. Let me start the conversation by giving you a personal story. In February 1998, after an intense meeting on pricing, I went back to my office to consider our options. We were trying to develop a strategy to solve a problem some of our brands were having, but there were no easy answers. Over the course of the day, the game-changing idea that eventually became price optimization evolved in my mind. I spent the day fleshing out the details and running some analytics to see if it would work. And it did. I had discovered the answer to our pricing problem. It was an innovative, fact-based approach. It offered a solution to our problem. And I was extremely excited by the possibilities. So, for our next meeting, I walked into the conference room with the demeanor of Moses, descending from Mount Sinai. I hope you are getting the imagery. I was all smiles. I had the answer and I was about to bring this new idea to my colleagues. I was certain that they would immediately grasp the brilliance and elegance of this innovation. What response do you think I got from them? Was I greeted with wild cheers and a happy dance, as the euphoria of a great new idea slowly spread throughout the building? Or was I met with a tidal wave of negativity? This is not the way we do things here. We want it simple and this is not simple. Retailers will never allow it. If this is so great, why haven't we heard about it before? It is nothing but a big black box. This could not possibly work in our categories or on our brands. With a great sigh and a lot of disappointment, I knew that I had work to do. I don't think that my experience was unique. Seth Godin, author and entrepreneur, made an important point that pretty much summed up my experience. He noted that there is no correlation between how good your idea is and how likely your organization will be to embrace it. We might think that good ideas float to the top, just like cream in milk. On the other hand, bad ideas sink from their own weight. Godin's quote suggests that this may be wishful thinking. And we all know that the politics in an organization can often elevate bad ideas to the surface, and suppress otherwise good ones. It would seem that my experience is fairly common. Why do we have such a difficult time getting new ideas and innovations accepted? Let's review the 4 stages of the innovation adoption pyramid, to see if we can find any clues. I have identified 4 separate innovation stages from innovation development or acquisition, to initial sell-in and acceptance, to widespread implementation, and finally, sustainability. Here's a key epiphany. The skill sets required at each stage of the pyramid are different. People who have the technical expertise to develop innovations may not have the selling or marketing skills, or process management knowledge required to get them accepted into the organization. Think about the implications of that statement. To successfully develop and sell innovations into your organization, you need a diverse set of skills that few individuals possess. Yet, without this diverse set of skills, getting innovations and new ideas accepted is very difficult. It is no wonder that so many great innovations go by the wayside. But, this is not to say that selling change is a lost cause. You can successfully get your innovations accepted within your organization. However, it will take a concerted effort and planning. Let's review some strategies and tactics that will make your task easier. What will it take for us to succeed when we want to have new innovations adopted in our organization? Let's start with some important components of a successful innovation sell-in. This is what I call the influence infrastructure. The influence infrastructure contains the elements that you will need to be successful. The first element involves the identification of an advocate or champion in the organization. We started by noting that the technical skills possessed by innovators are typically different from those required to sell or implement new ideas. So if you are a developer, what to do? If you don't have the skills to sell your ideas, you only have two options. Number 1, gain those skills. Or number 2, get help from someone who does. You should never assume that it is all up to you. Reach out to those in the organization who can assist. This may be required because selling skills are only part of the puzzle. You also may need help from someone who has credibility among end users. What characteristics do you look for in a champion? First, and perhaps most obvious, seek someone who sees the need for change and the value of what you are bringing to the table. Someone in touch with the needs and hot buttons of the user community. Someone who has a sense of the nuts and bolts of managing the business. And someone who has an appreciation for any strategic and tactical issues addressed by the innovation. Your champion should have credibility among other line staffers and senior management. And a reputation for being somewhat visionary. There is one issue that comes up often, that can derail your efforts to effectively sell your innovations. Namely, recognition or credit for the contribution. As an innovation developer, you are not turning over your baby to the champion. The champion is the front person. This person will offer their expertise and standing in the organization to assist you. Support staff offers consulting and advice to the champion. Clearly, everyone works as part of a team. It is human nature to want credit when you have put your heart and soul into an innovation. So, it is important that issues related to recognition for the contribution be addressed up front. But don't let it get in the way. Remember, the goal is to sell the innovation into the organization. If it doesn't gain traction, no one wins. The second element involves the targets of your persuasion efforts. The need to convince those who are directly responsible for approving your innovation is obvious. But, there are other stakeholders who must also be brought on board. One important group is people I call non-decision maker influentials. These are people who are not directly responsible for approving the innovation but can have a positive or negative influence on those who do. Let's examine these two influential groups. We start with primary decision makers, people who are directly responsible for deciding whether the innovation should be adopted into the organization. Our job, with the help of our champion, is to convince these people of the value of the changes and to clear up any confusion. Next, we must convince non-decision maker influentials of the value of our innovation. These people are important because they can influence primary decision makers. This is to say that they can be great advocates or they can be powerful detractors. For this reason, it is absolutely crucial that you seek their support and bring them on board as part of your selling efforts. I can't stress enough how important it is to identify and seek the support of these individuals. These people can be a great help in your selling efforts and those of your champion. It is equally important that you preempt efforts to undercut you behind the scenes. I will discuss how to make these people advocates later in this webinar. Just be careful not to neglect this important group. The third component of the influence infrastructure is senior management support. Whenever your innovation could have a significant impact on the business. For example, changes to core business processes. Or, changes that will have a direct effect on sales or financial results. You must make senior management aware. However, keep in mind one bit of wisdom. While senior management support may be helpful, view this support as necessary, but not sufficient. There is a belief that once you have senior management sign off, it will be smooth sailing from there. But, this is a delusion. Resistance by end users can still derail your efforts. Getting only management support while neglecting sell-in efforts to primary decision makers and non-decision maker influentials is a huge gaffe. On the other hand, advocacy from senior management can serve as a helpful foundation of support. Understand that your goal is not simply to make management aware of your innovation. It's to create advocates who will actively push for adoption and use. So, what am I suggesting? As you begin your sell-in efforts, make sure that you and your champion do a 360 degrees assessment of who needs to be convinced. Obviously, you must target primary decision makers, but be sure you cover off with others who could help or hinder your efforts. If your innovation rises to the level of a business driver, be sure to cover off with senior management and seek their advocacy, as well. The goal is to create advocates and a pool of positive support. The fourth element of the influence infrastructure is to formalize the innovation into the business process flow. With rare exception, most innovations will be process improvements, not the invention of a totally new way of doing business. Therefore, for your innovations to take hold, you need to integrate them into existing business processes, and make it a mandated step towards associated business decisions. This will facilitate not only acceptance, but sustainability. So give some thought to where your innovation fits into the business and who you need to approach to get it integrated. Let me provide an example using one of my innovations, price optimization. Price optimization is a great example of a one-off technology. It was developed as part of a custom analytics project to support pricing decisions. The question was, where does this technology fit in terms of a range of business decisions involving pricing? I found three distinct areas of need. When sales teams develop pricing recommendations, they could use price optimization to improve sales and financial results for retailers and themselves. Marketing could use the technology when developing a pricing strategy for a brand or product portfolio. And it could be a crucial part of a process executed by finance when deciding on a price increase. This was a technology that could address the needs of several different management groups at several decision points. By the way, if we know where our innovation fits within various business processes, we will have a pretty good idea of who in the organization we need to convince. So, this exercise serves a number of purposes. The fifth component is to develop and tout success stories. Success breeds success. So, it is absolutely necessary that you develop success stories that you can use in the organization to sell your innovation. These success stories can come from several different sources. First, use developer stories. As you develop the innovation, do you have any validation evidence that you can use to show the advantages that your innovation provides? Next, leverage beta testers. In any organization there are marketing and sales teams that are ahead of the curve. Use these teams to test and evaluate your innovations. Develop success stories from the experience of these teams. Finally, use post-implementation assessments to develop additional success stories ongoing. It is important to keep one thing in mind. Most people are not so much negative about what you are trying to introduce, as they just want some proof that it will work before they adopt a change. Your success stories should show the clear advantages that your innovation would provide and the value of making a change. Your success stories should give users the confidence that your innovation is worth the time and effort involved in making a change. Finally, the sixth element requires that you continue to reinforce the innovation after the fact. Until your innovation moves from being a new approach to a standard component of decisions, you need to continue to reinforce its value to the organization. This is particularly important early on because old habits die hard. Reinforce the value by continuing to circulate your success stories and using your champion to reinforce the value among line and senior management. This is a requirement to keep the innovation top of mind, but also because people frequently change jobs in an organization. People new to a role need to be apprised and sold on the innovation. This is important for sustainability. So, putting it together, the influence infrastructure involves a process flow. Think of this as a pipeline to a successful innovation sell-in that involves the influencers, the people responsible for selling the innovation, the influencees, the people you need to convince in the process of getting your innovations adopted. Process integration. largely the results of your sell-in efforts to make the innovation a critical component or step in business decisions, and ensuring the sustainability of the innovation. The influence infrastructure has distinct elements in a process flow. This diagram will help you gain an understanding of how a successful innovation sell-in works. It should give you an appreciation for the sophistication required to successfully sell your innovation. Now, let's shift gears and talk about some tactics that you can use to make your innovations more interesting to people in your organization. Some people consider these to be little more than psychological manipulation. But, I see it as marketing your ideas. Use these tactics to increase interest in your innovation. In this discussion, I will draw heavily from the work of Dr. John Daly of the University of Texas. I would recommend his book, Advocacy, Championing Ideas and Influencing Others. It is a great resource that can help you to be more effective in selling your innovations. Let's talk about 5 tactics that are particularly effective for getting your innovations adopted. Tactic number 1. Use God terms when describing your innovation. God terms are phrases you can use that have positive and special meaning in your organization. Examples of these are: it's a state-of-the-art innovation. It's becoming an industry standard. It provides a competitive advantage. It allows fact-based decision-making. It's a game changer. And there are undoubtedly others. When people hear these terms, it piques their interest. Each organization will have these. Use them to describe your innovation as appropriate. It will help you build interest. However, I would give you one warning. Be careful that you clearly understand the significance of these terms in your organization. In one company where I worked, our CEO equated the term, state of the art, to costs too much. Obviously, I did not use state of the art when trying to sell a technology to him. Can you develop a list of God terms appropriate for your organization? Tactic number 2. Reference lust companies. Lust companies, we all have them. They are companies that can be in your industry or outside. They are viewed by people in your organization as being especially effective, innovative, and ahead of the curve. People in your company want to emulate their lust companies. If you say that one of your lust companies is doing something, people listen and are predisposed to follow. Examples in my career have been Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola, Microsoft, Johnson & Johnson, Kellogg's, and Kraft. If you can tag your lust companies to the technology or innovation you are trying to introduce, you will have a powerful linkage that you can use to sell your innovation. How do you figure out if your lust companies are linked to your innovation or something similar? Number 1, go to the websites of suppliers/vendors who offer technologies or innovations similar to yours, and search their client list for your lust companies. Number 2, search the internet for press releases from your lust companies that suggest they are using your innovation or something similar. Number 3, have your library search the trade press to find articles related to your innovation. Are any of your lust companies cited? Number 4, conference proceedings such as those from AMA or ARF are a rich source of information since presenters love to tout their innovations in these venues. Number 5, if you have people in your company who do competitive intelligence, see what they can dig up. Use this information as you try to gain support in your organization. Tactic number 3. Reference customer and competitor usage. This is an offshoot of the concept behind lust companies but with a twist. You can reference this usage to build interest, or fear. Competitor usage, here's what you say to gain interest in your innovation: competitors are using this or a similar technology. They could gain a competitive advantage over us. Or if competitors are not using the technology, we have an opportunity to gain an advantage over them. Customer usage, here's what you say to spark interest in your innovation: customers are using this or a similar technology. We don't want to appear to be behind the times in their eyes. Most companies like to think of themselves as above average. The thought that they may be behind the curve is terrifying. Use this fear to spark interest in your innovation. Tactic number 4. Light a fire for action. You have gotten your primary decision makers and other influentials interested in your innovation. Now you must move them to action. Delay is your enemy and takes a number of forms. People may say, "Let me bring this up at the next staff meeting," which could be weeks away. Or "Let me think about it." Or "I need to cover off with other managers or my boss." Whatever, these are delays that could go on forever. You need to move them to action by creating a sense of urgency. Use competitors. Here's what you say: "If we move quickly we can gain a competitive advantage," or "This technology is quickly becoming an industry standard. We cannot afford to delay any longer." Use a company crisis. "We have an immediate problem and my innovation can offer a solution, but we need to move quickly." Remember, delay leads to inertia that can threaten acceptance. Tactic number 5. WIIFM, play to self-interest. WIIFM is an acronym for What's in it for me. Self-interest is a very powerful psychological motivator. If you can show the key decision makers and influentials in your organization the personal value of your innovation, they are much more likely to support you. How will your innovation make their job easier? Make them look smarter in the organization. Get them a larger bonus or a promotion. Play to this emotion and you will increase your likelihood of success. Pindar, the Greek poet and philosopher, pointed this out when he noted, "Even wisdom has to yield to self-interest." Appealing to logic makes sense. But, if you really want to gain acceptance and advocacy, play to the emotional appeal of self-interest. Now, we can put all of these elements and tactics together, including the influence infrastructure, tactics to make our innovation more compelling, and the time flow of our influencing activities. We can develop what I have called the rules of engagement. They will make the sell-in of our innovations more likely to succeed. These are the 7 required elements of your sell-in activities. Let's review the 7 rules for a successful innovation sell-in. Rule number 1. Have a formal sell-in plan. One of the biggest impediments to having our innovations accepted is that we have no formal plan in place for the sell-in. Most efforts go into the development with little forethought about the next steps. We generally assume that since we see the value of the innovations that we produce, everyone else will, as well. The reality is that this is a bad assumption. Success demands a plan. The elements of a successful plan are that it must be formal, meaning written; specific, who is going to do what; time-bound, when will certain actions be completed; action-oriented; and realistic. As Sir Winston Churchill once pointed out, failing to plan is planning to fail. The point is, don't give this important element of adoption short shrift if you want your innovation to take hold in your organization. The effort that you put into a sell-in plan is at least as important as the effort you put into developing or acquiring the innovation. Enough said. Rule number 2. Work as a team. There are several elements of the innovation acceptance process that would suggest that no one person can do it alone. It is clear that no one person has the skills required to span the 4 levels of innovation acceptance. A team can blend the expertise from different functional areas. Fill the team with people who have the diverse skill sets necessary to sell the specific innovation. Don't be a lone ranger if you want to succeed. Here's what Sunday Adelaja, a noted cleric, said about teams. The strength of a team is in making up for each other's weaknesses. United they can attain a goal in time. A diversity of expertise is necessary when you are attempting to sell innovation. So, construct your team to represent the expertise that you will need. Rule number 3. Sell the innovation on functional benefits, not technical superiority. Developers like to point out all of the nice technical nuances of the innovations they develop. These are the things that excite them. However, this is the kiss of death when you are trying to sell new technologies to a non-technical end user. Consider our previous discussion of WIIFM, what's in it for me? End users want to know how your innovation will help them. And as important, why they should put the effort into adopting a change. Use your champion to bridge the gap between the technical developers and the user community. When you describe your innovation to end users, you might find a common marketing communications model helpful. You should cover 3 communication points. Number 1, generally, what is the innovation? Provide a brief description. Number 2, what does the innovation do? Describe the basic functionality. And finally, number 3, what are the benefits to the end user or WIIFM, what's in it for me? This should provide end users with a general idea of what you are offering and why they should care. Rule number 4, use the influencing tactics to make the innovation more compelling. For example, use God terms to describe your innovation. Reference lust companies when appropriate. Bring up usage by competitors and customers to build a sense of urgency. Play to self-interest when building a case for your innovation. Provide your stakeholders with an offer that they can't refuse. It worked for the Godfather and I have no doubt that it will work for you. Rule number 5. Assess the influential landscape. As part of your innovation sell-in plan, do a 360 degrees assessment of the influential landscape. Who in line or senior management should be brought up to speed and convinced? Who are the primary decision makers relative to acceptance of your innovations? Who are the non-decision maker influentials who can help or sabotage your efforts? Be sure to sell to these various groups, and to address any confusion or concerns. Rule number 6. Integrate the innovation into current business processes. Rule number 6 is focused on the sustainability of your innovation in the organization. Most innovations involve process improvements rather than the introduction of a totally new process. Ergo, innovations that are process improvements must be part of a process to be improved. Otherwise, their sustainability is in doubt. Determine where in the decision flow your innovation falls and make this clear to all end users. Rule number 7. Continue to reinforce the innovation after the initial sell-in. It is natural to want to introduce your innovation into the organization and then move on to the next one. However, if your goal is acceptance and sustainability, you must continue to reinforce the value of each of your innovations ongoing. Consider this to be a required activity until the innovation becomes an accepted and ingrained part of business management. Innovation and change are necessary to keep your company in the game. Yet, people are adverse to change. The purpose of this webinar was to provide you with tips, tricks, tactics, and strategies that can help you overcome resistance to change in your organization. Remember my personal story? The one from 1998? It was about a technology called price optimization. It was about a powerful technology. It offered an innovative solution to pricing decision making. But, it met a lot of resistance. Initially, Vicente Fox, the former president of Mexico, said it best. Ideas come in their own time. In hindsight, your innovations may have obvious value. However, you are likely to face considerable resistance short term. So, did my innovation die a horrible death, or did I just need to wait for the right time to come? I did not give up. I developed a plan. I was persistent. I demonstrated the value of the innovation. And, I had unwavering confidence in my idea. The question was, ultimately, was anyone listening? Fast forward 14 years. And, price optimization was adopted as a global pricing best practice by the largest CPG company in the world. This is my personal success story. How will you apply what you have learned in this webinar to create yours? Thank you.